Bill, would you have liked to be a fly on the wall during the Taylor Decker contract negotiations that just came to a close?
Can we call it? Yes, I would love to be that fly on the wall, Chet. Can we call it a negotiation if there is no negotiating?
I don't think there was a negotiation. I believe a situation was presented and said player said, nope, I'm going to free agency. And
please release me.
Yeah.
This is The Litter Box, a Detroit Lions podcast with your hosts, Chet West and Bill Patterson.
Lions Litter Box fans, welcome back. We're doing a little more off-season coverage here for you. We've got some news on a few players or former players. We're going to give you some of these updates, some restructuring of contracts that could potentially come down the pike here. Say goodbye to David Montgomery, Taylor Decker, Graham Glasgow, give our thoughts on that. And then a little free agent outlook. Who's our guy? Who do we want him to go after? And then we're going to give you our thoughts on Brad Holmes and how much we may trust him and his ability to find and fill these gaps with the correct players. Bill, we've had some news in Lion Land over the past couple of weeks. It would be our job to update our listeners on a few of these items. What sticks out to you the most over the last couple of weeks here with all the restructuring and the deals and the cuts?
We're still waiting on a lot of restructuring, namely Jared Goff's, potentially St. Brown, and potentially Sewell's contracts being converted to more cash up front, voidable years, etc., which should free up a ton of money for the Lions to be aggressive in free agency. As the time of this recording, which is Saturday 11th, we still don't know anything about that. There's been no news on that. But ahead of the league year, I think we're all expecting something like that to happen. So Mike Disner and Brad Holmes will sharpen the pencils and get the Lions free and clear. With that being out, Chet, I am going to miss Montgomery as a player. I'm going to miss Decker as a player. I think Glasgow's time had come to an end. I think he maybe played one more year. I also think that what the Lions did was really unfair. He was a good left guard. He was never a great professional center. And what the Lions did last year was absolutely crazy, trying to either slide him or Tate Ratledge over and not trying to backfill the huge void left by Frank Ragnow's retirement.
I mean, in defense of that, Ragnow did kind of leave them a little high and dry in that situation. I don't know all of the facts around how long they knew he was going to retire or when the actual decision was made, but they can't really act until it is, right? So they're kind of left a little hanging there.
So part of that was the good faith, and that's one of the topics I want to talk about today, is the Lions have always really, under this current regime, taken care of their own. They've extended guys, a lot of guys, probably prematurely. And some of those make sense. You know, with St. Brown, Sewell, and JMO, they actually saved money against the market rate. I think Goff's getting pretty fair market value on that. But again, they've tried to avoid, like, say, what the Dallas Cowboys do, where they're paying an exorbitant amount for CeeDee Lamb, you know, top of the market for receivers. Same thing for Dak Prescott. And essentially, that's why the Cowboys probably moved on from Micah Parsons. Bringing us back to the Detroit, Honolulu Blue and Silver Lions, Chet, my thoughts are this. Having two running backs that are elite was always a luxury that I don't think the Lions ever thought they'd find themselves in that situation. When they extended Montgomery after his initial contract, I thought it was one of the oddest things they'd ever done. It happened during the season, and it was not a matter of if, but it was when David Montgomery would get moved. We joked in the intro about the Taylor Decker no negotiation or very poor one-sided negotiation.
Sure.
Chet, the fact is, all we hear about is culture, you know, the Lions culture. Guys want to be here. Well, isn't it weird that Montgomery, hey, I'm not getting enough carries. I don't want to be here. Get me out. Hey, Decker, we want you to take a reduced salary because we're not sure you're going to make it through 17 games. Nope, I'm not willing to do that. Release me. And so what I'm curious to you and to the listeners about is, are we starting to see cracks in this culture? Or are the Lions just doing what real franchises do, and that's moving off of guys before they become like Graham Glasgow was last year?
I want you to stop right there, because I think that's the best point in all of that is, are they just acting like a real organization right now and not getting hung up on their guys? That is, maybe this is the step forward that we're all looking for in the maturation of the Detroit Lions as a football club.
That was really well stated. It would be great if you could do that again. It's like a quote we need on like a T-shirt or something.
I don't want to wear that around town.
The next step in the maturation of the Detroit Lions.
I think it may be. Now,
I agree.
The other side of that is, did we just let go of a guy who's going to be a Pro Bowl left tackle this year? No, I don't think we did. I think those days for Decker are over, right? I think those days for Glasgow are in the rearview mirror. I'm sad to see them go, like you. David Montgomery, I still think has a lot of fire. I don't think, since his knee injury 2 seasons ago, I don't think he showed quite the same grit and determination in his runs that he did 2 years ago. Now, running backs get beat up. They get injured, okay? I'm not going to sit here and say that I expect David Montgomery, especially the way he runs, to stay healthy 24/7, 365. He is going to go to the Texans now, and I believe get used in that same role. Who knows if he stays healthy all season long? They've been trading away offensive line pieces left and right. Who's going to block for him at this point? But best of luck to David Montgomery. I think it was probably career-wise maybe the best move for him at this moment. He was going to be behind Gibbs going forward. What else? What do you think of some potential cap conversions here, Bill? What do you think we can do to restructure some contracts? We look at Goff, right? He's right off the bat, first and foremost. He is due, his cap number rises to $69.6 million next season. A simple salary conversion plus 2 void years can open up a much needed $42.9 million of space per Spotrac. So these conversions are basically, they're just taking salary, turning it into a signing bonus, restructuring a contract. The guy doesn't theoretically lose money in the end. He's just getting more of it up front. It comes off of our bottom line towards the cap. We save space.
And actually, it's a good thing for players, for the fact that you have the bird in hand is the signing bonus, and you're converting more of that to one-time lump sum payments, opposed to having it, in your game checks, which can also be null and void, when the team decides to release you, etc. I read a really interesting article today. A team that struggled mightily and refuses to do this happens to be the Las Vegas Raiders. They do not convert. It's like a philosophy within the Raiders.
Really? Is it Al Davis philosophy? No conversions?
No conversions. I don't know if it's passed on to him, to Mark, to whomever's running the Raiders at this point. They've cycled through, 4 general managers in the last 6 seasons or something.
And behold, they're a terrible team and have been for a while.
Exactly. Where you look at the smartly run franchises, the Chiefs, Ravens, Broncos, let's talk about the Rams and 49ers. This is the secret sauce. You're
Eagles, taking unguaranteed money and turning it into guaranteed money in a lot of these situations, right?
Which,
to some degree or another,
is how you play the cap game. But also, Chet, you've got happy campers from the fact you've never heard a player say,
that's you see
give me
how
the bird
often
in hand.
Players are willing to restructure. It has to work well for them in the end.
Exactly.
And plus, they're thinking, I'm going to get better players around me. We're going to be a better team. Anybody who's a winner wants that.
So let's talk about this, Chet, because the key thing is, if this is done, and you and I are both in the belief, and so are others, that it's not an if, it's going to be a win. Let's talk about, who are your guys and who do we want if the Lions are going to be splashing free agency? Now, Chet, we are hearing mixed reports on this. Dave Burkett said that he talked to various agents at the scouting combine in Indianapolis and that the Lions were not expected to be major players. Then you hear a totally different report from Colton Pouncey from The Athletic. He talked to people that said the Lions were going to be major players in this.
Well, I would have thought that, honestly, Bill. I would have thought the former. I would have thought that we weren't going to be that big of a player here. But all of a sudden, you hear all this cap space clearance and stuff. Like they're making room to go get guys. And I think their hand is being forced. I think they have to be a player now. They need a left tackle. They need a left guard. They need a center. I mean, we're going, and if they don't need a center, they move Ratledge over. They need a right guard. They need 3 offensive linemen who are starters. They don't have that on the roster outside of Penei and Tate, okay? They got to go get 3 offensive linemen. That's very expensive. Very expensive. One of those 3 is going to be like Juice Scruggs or something. We're going to try and get by with that, right? But you can't do that at 2 out of those 3 positions. It'll be a nightmare. Plus, we've got defensive backfield issues. We got to go get guys there. We got holes to fill there. The draft is only going to get you a guy or 2 that can start at day 1 at best, if that.
And the Lions are currently sitting at 8 draft picks. Hopefully a 9th will come as a compensatory pick for Kevin Zeitler signing with the Titans. But I agree.
That's great, but I'm sorry. How often does a draft pick start on opening as a starter at any point in this first season? I mean, it's just so unlikely.
You have to hit like you did with
I should rephrase it. How often do they start and perform well and help the team?
So free agency's got to be part of this. And this leads to, I think Montgomery was a luxury that we couldn't afford. The Texans have already released Joe Mixon, so they are planning to utilize David Montgomery. We got a 4th round pick, Chet, out of it and a 7th. It was a great move, plus the salary relief. Taylor Decker is a bigger problem, Chet. And I wish the negotiations had gone better because here's the fact. I don't know that there's any savings unless you draft right tackle. And so here's the expectation, Chet. Penei Sewell moves from right tackle to left tackle. They're paying him like a left tackle. And Chet, it's easier to find a right tackle and it's cheaper to find a right tackle.
How depressed would you be? I'm going to throw this question at you while you're on this roll here and Penei came up. How depressed would you be if they moved Penei to left tackle and he just wasn't that great?
Very, very, very depressed.
Would you be shocked?
Yeah, because he's
arguably the best athlete in one of the best athletes on the team, and he can probably handle it.
He's the best player on the Lions. It's whose jersey I rock. And
go from being like a perennial all-pro at right tackle. We put him at left tackle, and he just struggles in season 1. Would just be a bad feel. I don't see it, but
I would be really distraught to answer your question. So, talking about guys, we've already seen some shakeup at the center position, Chet. A gentleman by the name of Garrett Bradbury was traded from the Patriots to division rival Chicago Bears. So they filled that because their center that they signed last year in free agency, Drew Dahlman, retired at age 27. Wish, again, Chet, that we had known this about Frank Ragnow. And Frank Ragnow will always kind of, I don't want to say, time heals all wounds. He retired in June, Chet, and he really left the Lions in a bad position for it.
He did.
And then even worse, they tried to bring him back.
Yeah.
And I heard a rumor, unconfirmed, but from a former teammate of his, that he was so excited when he got the call that he sprinted off the couch, and that's where he tore his hammy.
Come on.
I know.
That's incredible. So I am in a situation now where I'm looking at our O-line and we are hurting. And then you see the Bears just go flip a trade like that. They lose their center. Bam. They got a new center. A very good one at that.
And the Chargers also, Commanders, that's one, released their center and he was picked up like that from the Chargers. And then also in the division, Ryan Kelly retired after 10 seasons, the Vikings center. So now all of a sudden, Chet,
everybody needs a center.
Everybody needs a center, and there's a couple guys in the draft, like 2 or 3, but are they day 1 starters, to your point? And so now all of a sudden, whatever cap savings we got with between Glasgow, Decker, and Montgomery, I mean, you're going to have to spend that on a center, and then that still means drafting a right tackle. There's still the potential that that new right tackle in Ratledge an area of strength. How does Sewell do moving to the other side? He's going to have a new partner next to him as a left guard, unless it's Mahogany.
So you're piling them all on here. They're all stacking up, and this leads to a question.
Yeah.
How much do you trust Brad Holmes to get this thing done?
Yeah, we put this in our notes today.
Yep.
So I'm going to answer it immediately, and then I'm going to give you my reasons why.
Okay.
He is still at a 9 out of 10 for me, and hear me out. Okay?
Yeah.
I know that DJ Reed was not the cornerback that we hoped. He was injured last year. But before that, he signed Carlton Davis III, who was excellent. And hindsight being 2020, who knew that Carlton Davis would be a key contributor to the Patriots Super Bowl run?
Yep.
In addition to that, Chet, Kevin Zeitler was nothing short of a masterstroke. You know, in 2025, the Lions had the best offensive line in football, and he was the only non-homegrown guy, and he was awesome. So I'm going to give him credit on those two. He also signed Tim Patrick, that was really, really good as, you know, the third wideout. So I do think there's value there. Rock Ya-Sin is another guy that he just picked up off the scrap heap. So I believe in Brad Holmes. The drafts have not been as great as we've wanted. And here's where I think Brad needs to get back to his core beliefs. Draft best player available. Don't draft for need. And quit with the projects. The Giovanni Manus, the Broderick Martins, the Hendon Hookers are the blemishes on Brad's resume. The Sione Vakis, you know, drafting guys that are the best available athlete, potentially, but also huge projects. Stop with that and just get back to drafting Brian Branches, Laportas, Aleem McNeils, and we'll let it handle itself. But yeah, Chet, I counted today. There are 8 holes on this roster that need to be filled immediately. 8, potentially 9 draft picks. So the Lions need to be active in free agency to the tune of 3 to 5 players.
I think the draft is a tough one to judge a GM on in a lot of ways, because outside of your first round pick and maybe your second round pick, the rest are kind of a dice roll to one degree or the other. But you're right. He does seem to move up to get these guys that he has his heart set on, and they don't really come out on top in the end. I mean, Manu was a 4th, Vaki a 4th.
Yeah, but he
Hooker
traded
a 3rd.
But he traded additional capital in all 3 examples.
I get where you're going. But I don't want to pick on his drafting as much as I would like to pick on his free agent signings.
Okay, so let's talk.
We think it's less so who they've signed and more so who they haven't signed, or how they haven't gone out and filled voids with experienced veterans who were out there to get. I think they are allergic to trading draft picks, period. I don't think they like to trade a draft pick for a free agent. I just don't think they like doing it.
That's fair. It's opposite of Les Snead, you know, his mentor in Los Angeles.
Sure.
So really quick, Chet, let's talk about the misses. DJ Reader, the defensive tackle would be one.
Yeah.
However, I would argue that Roy Lopez was scrap heap and was arguably one of our best defensive linemen.
Does he seem to do better off the scrap heap than he does off of the big signing? Is this where we're going with this? I would agree with that. I think he finds the Carlton Davis, he finds the Rock Ya-Sin, he finds, the
Alex Anzalone was a great signing.
I think he came with some they had some knowledge of him. Campbell had a lot of knowledge of him from the Saints.
It worked in that example. It did not work with Marcus Davenport.
But when we go to sign the big guy, I start thinking about the defensive end, he slipped my mind, and I can't believe he even slipped my mind, because what's his name?
Trey Hendrickson.
No, the defensive end we signed and sat injured for 2 straight years. Marcus Davenport.
We were just talking about
Marcus Davenport was like a disaster.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, he's never healthy.
I look at him and it's just like, why are we signing? Like, these are terrible signings. These are their big ticket signings. And I can't wrap my head around that. But then we can go grab stuff it's like he's a good scout, but when it comes to making the big deal, it never seems to work out, or they're trying to get a certain type of player with that money, like from a personality or a known quantity standpoint. And I don't know. I can't figure it out, but he can't seem to hit a big signing.
So what is your belief? Where are you on the 1 through 10 scale on Brad? And then let's get back to our wish list.
I give him this point right now, due to the fact that in my opinion, he has had successful drafts. He has brought quite a few talented players to the team. I give him an 8. But in free agency, I just haven't seen anything. And then on top of that, it's the lack of activity in free agency. I think he needs to do more, and he needs to gamble a little more. I would like to see him gamble a little more. I would have liked to see, nobody in the world wants to trade 2 firsts for Max Crosby, and we may say the Ravens were in error of doing that, but we have somebody to pair Max Crosby with that would make our defensive line dominant, and Max Crosby wanted to come here. I feel like that would have been a good signing. I would have given 2 firsts for that, just to see him play great 1 year like that. But I like to gamble. So
I would have given 2 firsts for that as well.
There's some people that say you're crazy. I just don't know that what do we have? The 9th pick? What do we have in this year's draft? The 10th pick? 17th pick. Is the 17th pick worth that much? And maybe they offered it and the Raiders were like, we don't want the 17th pick. We need a top 10. Maybe that was their deal. I don't know. I don't know what they were going
They got
after.
14 from the Ravens.
So I feel like our 17 probably would have worked if we had thrown in, next year's first, which hopefully will be below 20. And then maybe a 6th or something down the road to cap it all off and get it done. I don't know what we had to compete with. Maybe we were in on it. But you go get a Max Crosby. That would be that would inject a lot of energy into this team. Now, does it solve our offensive line woes? No, it does not. So we have a bunch of woes there, too, that we have to figure out.
Here's my wish list, and I see the Lions doing one of 2 things. Either this year's a gap year, they don't restructure all the deals that we talked about, they focus heavily on the draft, and Brad goes back to the free agent scrap heap, or they do what I would like to see them do, which is sign Connor McGovern, center from the Buffalo Bills.
Sure.
Dan Campbell said at his presser he wants a veteran center, someone to make that go. And then you sign a right tackle free agent. I've got a name for you that I don't think was on your bingo card, but I'm real high on this guy. Trey Pipkins from the Chargers.
It wasn't on my bingo card. Guarantee you that.
Here's why he's a free agent. He played both right and left tackle last year, so he's got good versatility. The reason he played is because both of their tackles, Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt, got hurt early. Those are their starting tackles. They're both former first-round picks. There's not a place for them. They can't pay 3 tackles. And I think if you got those 2 moves, and then I've got a name for you on defense. 2 names, actually.
Okay.
One is going to be more expensive, but he's a free agent because he plays for a team nicknamed the Bungles, or formerly played, and that is Trey Hendrickson. He is Max Crosby light.
Yep.
Or
I would take him in a heartbeat. No, I agree.
But you don't have to give up draft capital because he's a free agent.
Yep.
Problem is he's from the Tampa area, and apparently that's where he might be headed. And then the other one, it's not quite as exciting. He would be like a Kevin Zeitler 1-year rental, and that would be Khalil Mack, again, from the Chargers, to pair opposite Hutch. And then therefore you have a real pass rush, unlike anything Davenport, he who shall be nameless, shows. What are your thoughts on what I just shared?
I like the Trey Henderson. I think he's the next best option on the list. I just don't know if we're going to get him because of what you said. I think he does want to be down south, somewhere in Florida, near home, whatever. I would rather. I like the offensive line selections that you made there. I have no issues there. Do you think that center is a more important selection right now for the team as composed than a left tackle, though?
Again, I don't go after a left tackle. I'm going after a right.
You're going after a right. You want to move Sewell that bad. Okay. Well, right. So you're moving Sewell.
You're paying him. And the only reason that he didn't move there initially, he played left tackle.
Then I'm going to say a center is more important, personally.
Yes.
So I'd like to see them go after a center in free agency. And I would like to see we probably need a guard too, though. If we're not going to,
that you could find a swing tackle and a guard in the draft, and you can find a backup running back, in the draft, or, you traded all this draft capital to get Sion Vaki. He's clearly not playing safety for the Lions. Chet, you got to give him a go at some point.
Again, this is another one of these things that's like, you look at Sion Vaki and how high he was drafted, you want to get something out of him more than a special teamer.
Exactly.
I feel like he would have been the guy instead of Craig Reynolds if that was the case when Monty went down. And he's never really filled that role. So I just don't know what to make of that situation.
And that leads back to, is it a gap year? Like, do the Lions trot out Manu at one of the tackle spots? Do they trot out Vaki as the backup or RB2? And, is Coleslaw kind of, he's not a tight end, Chet, but did they line him up closer to the line of scrimmage and use him more like you'd use like an Isaiah Likely, like a tight end that's not putting his hand on the ground blocking, So there's all sorts of possibilities with it, but I'm leaning more to the Lions treating this as a gap year and then
really? You think so? Okay.
Going all in 27.
There you have it, fans. This is a gap year. Enjoy the 2026 Detroit Lions. Bill has declared it. We're going nowhere this season. There are too many holes to fill.
I still think they can win 10 games in a gap year, Chet.
Maybe they could still go to the playoffs. They just got to take care of their division, right?
But
and they're going to have a weaker schedule.
All right, let me ask you an honest question.
Yeah.
Is this team, as it's constructed today,
no,
a Super Bowl team?
No.
Okay, right?
Not a chance.
10 wins is probably the
so many holes as constructed at the moment, not taking into consideration any free agent signings. I think that's the point of our whole show here. We do not have key, integral pieces needed to get to the Super Bowl or even the playoffs right now. We are missing offensive linemen. We are missing defensive backs. You know they're going to sign like a Jaquan Brisker or a Kobe Bryant, somebody to play in the defensive backfield somewhere. They need a safety. They probably need a corner. Who knows what's going to happen now with Terry and Arnold? Have we heard anything on that? That could go up in smoke too. So Tariq Woolen, Nashawn Wright, Jalen Watson, somebody like that, we're going to end up landing one of those guys in our defensive backfield, if not two of them, because he likes signing free agent corners and safeties. And then we're going to have to go out and find offensive linemen too. I think we're going to have a ton of signings. So key dates, right? Monday is the legal tampering period can start this Monday. 2 days from now. That's what the NFL calls it, the legal tampering period, which is hilarious. It's tampering, but it's legal. And then Wednesday is when free agency officially starts, league calendar year turns over, signings can begin. We're going to start hearing stuff on Monday. Monday's usually a big day. I always go back to the Kyle Vanden Bosch deal when the Lions were sitting on his front doorstep waiting for him that morning to wake up, basically, and they were like, "You're coming with us." Loved that. So maybe we'll get one of those here on Monday or Tuesday. We'll hear some news, but I have a feeling over the next starting Monday, that 3-day period is going to be busy for the Lions, or it should be. Or my grade for Brad Holmes is going down to a 6 right off the bat if we don't get something done. But I believe we will. Final thoughts, Bill.
Get her done, Brad. Go
Lions.
Lions.
Get her done. That's it. Just get her done, Brad, or it's a gap year, one or the other. All right, Lions fans, that's a little update. We'll be back more towards the draft, probably in about a week or two after free agency settles down. We figure out what's going on. Maybe if there's some really big news, we'll hit you back on Wednesday. We'll see what happens there. I'm taking off for a little while. Bill has other things. We'll get back with some updates as they come. Go Lions.